I want to talk about a passage out of First Samuel. Our church has been in our devotions in the book of First Samuel, which is about the rise of the kingship and of David. And I want to look today at First Samuel chapter 22. And it's a particularly painful and pointed picture of Saul. The first king of Israel is Saul, and how he is, the dissolution of King Saul, and how he is becoming more and more wicked and arrogant and insecure, seeking to keep and hold on to his power. So let's pick it up here. So um, verse 7 of chapter 20. Saul said to his servants who stood about him, "Hear now, people of Benjamin," that's one of the tribes. All right, "will the son of Jesse," we're talking about David here, "will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, that all of you have conspired against me?" This is how he talks. So what's happening now is David is getting famous. He's won a bunch of different battles. He's highly admired. David is very loyal to the king, actually loves the king. And at one point, he had the favor of the king, and the king even gave him his daughter to be his wife. But at this point in the book, David and a group of his men are running for their life because Saul is out to kill him because he sees David as a threat to his power. And here he is, he's in David's tribe, and he's basically saying, "Hey," it's like, "I'm the one who can, I'm the one who's going to," he offers a very, very worldly, fleshly kind of like, I can give you advantages, who can make you a commander of thousands. Is that going to be David? And so, but now he's accusing them of conspiring against him. And that actually hasn't been going on, but it goes on. "No one discloses to me when my son," and his very own son, this is Jonathan, makes a covenant with the son of Jesse, which is true. that actually has happened. But his son isn't trying to be rebellious to him. His son, Jonathan, truly loves David and sees God's hand on David. But here he is angry at his own son. He's lashing out against his own people. Says, "None of you is sorry for me or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as at this day." And so all that's not really even true, but this is how he thinks. So it's a window of how he thinks. So let me just jump ahead to verse 11. "Then the king sent to summon Ahimelech, the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests who were at Nob, and all of them came to the king. And Saul said, 'Hear now, son of Ahitub.' And he answered, 'Here I am, my lord.' And Saul said to him, 'Why have you conspired? Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, so that he has arisen against me to lie in wait, as at this day?'" Now, David, previously David had ran for his life, and the priest, is like, well, David's the king's servant, and he helped him. And so somehow this word had gotten back to Saul, and Saul is now accusing this priest of saying, like, "Hey, you're conspiring against me by helping David." And then this is verse 14. This is what Ahimelech said. "Then Ahimelech answered the king, 'And who among all your servants is so faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law and captain over your bodyguard, and honored in your house? Is today the first time that I've inquired of God for him? No. Let not the king impute anything to his servant or to all the house of my father, for your servant has known nothing of all this, much or little.'" It's like saying, "Are you kidding? Your Majesty, David. David isn't David great? I mean, like, I'm not conspiring. I mean, so like, this isn't the first time I've helped David. I didn't basically say I haven't done anything wrong," and he hasn't. Verse 16. "And the king said, 'You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house.'" So he's basically, "I'm going to kill you. You're the priest. I'm going to kill you and all the family of the priesthood." And the king said to the guard and stood about him, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, of Yahweh, because their hand is also with David, and they knew that he fled and did not disclose it to me." So now here is Saul. Just immediately, he is doing something which is clearly, utterly wicked. He's going to murder the priests of God. when it's all about his power. And this is what we're so nervous about today. Our politicians, our political leaders lie to us and do wicked things, always in consolidation of their power. We're worried about that in America. We used to be less worried about that, but those are things that we're concerned about, and we're concerned about that. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, we're concerned about that. But this is such a normal thing in the world. And it actually gets worse. So now he's meant to murder the priests, and the story gets really interesting. Um, uh, but the servants of the king would not put out their hand to strike the priests of the Lord. This is verse 17. Then the king said to, there's a man there who is famous or infamous, a guy named Doeg the Edomite. You turn and strike the priests. And Doeg the Edomite turned and struck down the priests, and he killed on that day 85 persons who wore the linen ephod. That's the priest's uniform. And Nob, the city of the priests, he put to the sword, both man and woman, child and infant, ox, donkey, and sheep. He put to the sword. Now, here you have this gross and violent man who will do something that even the king's own men refuse to do, because you get this sense that they know, like, I'm not going to do that. Are you kidding? But this man will do the king's bidding, and what you can see is he does this horrible, wicked thing, murdering women, children, the city of, not just the priests, but the city of the priests. It's like trying to wipe out any and all of them out of this very insecure, prideful, and wicked anger. Now, what I want to say is, why would I pick this passage? I want to teach you something about this passage that helps you to see the ways of God and really how to read the Bible. This is a passage, some of you would read that, you're like, Saul, wicked, murders priests. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to get out of this, and how is this supposed to help me? And one of the things I really want to just help you think about first, I already kind of mentioned it, how wickedness, lies, oppression, it's just such a normal feature, including even by people who are supposed to be of God. But so there's really profound things the Bible is saying about sin and leadership and the failure of leadership. But what I want to point out to you is from this passage, you can learn something really, really important about how to read the Bible, because here Saul is the first king of Israel. And what you see is you can get a feeling right away why God rejects him and then replaces him with David. And then out of the line of David is going to come the Messiah. But one of the things I really want you to see here is that even though Jesus isn't mentioned, the Messiah is not mentioned, prophecy is not mentioned, what I want you to see is, if you really know how to read the Bible, this passage, I know this is going to sound strange, is really about Jesus. How? Because all of the Bible in one way or another is trying to reveal God to us. And the ultimate revelation of God is his son, Jesus Christ, the Messiah. And all of the Old Testament is lining to point toward our need for salvation from the Messiah. And so much of the Old Testament is growing. It's like a plant that's growing, and this plant is growing. All these pieces are one another are pointing ultimately toward Jesus. Now, here's such a passage. Here's a king, first king of Israel. And what is this passage saying? We need a far better king than this. Oh, we need a far better king than this. This is our king. All these people are obedient to him. Actually, they won't even obey him, because when he commands the most wicked, horrible thing, and yet this other guy, there's always some other wicked guy, Doeg the Edomite. There's always going to be some Doeg the Edomite, it seems like. And what is this passage saying? We need a far better king than this. But then as the book unfurls, you're going to see that there's David, and what you're going to see is the failures of David. And David is a far better king than Saul, and David is called a man after God's own heart. But even then, David's not good enough as a king. And then there's going to be a whole series of other kings. And what is the Bible really showing us? We need a king. We need a leader. We need somebody far better than the usual ways of man, the usual ways of the world, and how we do leadership. And ultimately, that the one that we call the anointed one, the Messiah, the one who's going to be our ultimate savior, the passage is showing us that he's going to be a king. but he's not going to be any king like this. He's going to be far greater, far more holy, and far special than this king. And later on, you begin to recognize him if you have this history and these books in mind, and then you finally see the one born and laying in a manger. You see the one who sits and talks to prostitutes. You see the one who can speak to the richest and the highest, and yet without seeking after their power. The one who welcomes children, the one who dies on the cross for us. That's a king better than Saul. That's a king greater and more that we've all been waiting for, better than David. And I want you to, the point I want to teach you is how the Bible starts teaching you how we have a need for Jesus from what I would call the via negativa. So you see all these portions and you see what various different figures and leaders in one way or another, even in their profound failures, here in his wickedness, there is this teaching that in the background, even though Jesus is there, we're crying out for him. We're longing for him. The Bible's longing for him and setting up to say, when he comes, that you can see him. So, brothers and sisters, keep this in mind. When you're reading the Bible, think of all these different kinds of figures. You can see when they're great. You can see when they're bad. You can see sometimes even the wicked ones, and see in this how the word of God points toward the true Messiah, the true anointed one, Jesus Christ.